This is Bart Peterson, and you are listening to the FCPA Compliance Report on the Compliance Podcast Network.
This is Greg Gilchrist, and you are listening to the FCPA Compliance Report on the Compliance Podcast Network.
This is Dan DeMarco, and you are listening to the FCPA Compliance Report on the Compliance Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. I'd like to welcome you to a special series on the Herbalife FCPA enforcement action. Over the next 5 episodes, I am joined by 5 top compliance practitioners to take a look at some of the issues in this case. We begin with Mike Volkov, considering how he would have handled this case had he been approached by Herbalife. We then consider the lack of a monitor in Herbalife and some of the reasons by Jay Rosen. Matt Kelly considers the role of the board of directors and how they failed in this case. Jonathan Marks considers the role of gatekeepers in this case and decries a lack of skepticism at the board of directors. We conclude with Jonathan Armstrong taking a look at this case from the UK and UK Bribery Act angle and finds some Scottish cases which might inform a response. It's a podcast series I know you'll enjoy. Lots to unpack in the Herbalife case. These episodes are relatively short, 10 to 12 minutes each, so easily digestible. The special podcast series on the Herbalife FCPA enforcement action are a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. Lots of things going on in this case beyond sort of the technical aspects we've talked about so far. Were there any that really caught your eye or struck you, Jay?
Thanks, Tom. Well, I wouldn't be Mr. Monitor if my eyebrows were not raised when looking at all that had happened to the company that no monitor has been assigned to this. So I thought I'd take a look into the DPA and take a look into some of the signals we've gotten from the current administration as to why this had happened. So according to the DPA, the company did not self-disclose. And even with the lack of self-disclosure, the company still received, quote, full credit, unquote, for its cooperation with the independent investigation. This cooperation included making regular factual presentations to the United States, and after taking steps that the company and its affiliates determined complied with the applicable foreign data privacy, confidentiality, and discovery laws, they voluntarily made employees available for interviews. Next, the company engaged in extensive remediation, including taking disciplinary actions against and separating from employees involved in misconduct, enhancing its anti-corruption compliance program by, among other things, significantly increasing the personnel and resources devoted to compliance, and bolstering the company's annual risk assessment process. Under the FCPA corporate enforcement policy, if a company did not voluntarily disclose its misconduct to the Department of Justice in accordance with the standards set forth above, but later fully cooperated and timely and appropriately remediated in accordance with the standards set forth, the company will receive, or the department shall recommend to a sentencing court, up to a 25% reduction. So even though they didn't self-disclose, they got credit. Also of note in the settlement is the lack of a monitor. Once again, one can only state that Herbalife's defense counsel did a superior job in convincing the DOJ that a monitor was not needed for the company to complete its compliance program obligations under the DPA. The criteria for a monitorship has been set forth in the Bensikowski memo, and there are 2 broad criteria that the government looks at. 1, the potential benefits that employing a monitor may have for the company and public, and 2, the cost of a monitor and its impact on operations of a corporation. These 2 criteria are to be further evaluated by the following: whether the underlying misconduct involved manipulation of books or records or exploitation of an inadequate compliance program, whether the misconduct at issue was pervasive across the business, whether the corporation had made significant investments in and improvements to its corporate compliance program and internal controls, and whether remedial improvements to the compliance program and internal controls have been tested. Additional considerations included whether the changes in the corporate culture or leadership are adequate to safeguard against a recurrence of misconduct, whether adequate remedial measures were taken to address problem behavior by employees, management, or third parties, and in assessing the adequacy of a business organization's remediation efforts and the effectiveness and resources of its compliance program, criminal division attorneys should consider unique risks and compliance challenges the company faces, including particular regions or industries in which the company operates. So now taking a look finally at how did the company get such a great result? A serious matter requires a serious legal response. And when the company is in a series of FCPA issues, a serious legal response is required. In this case, it meant bringing on one of the top FCPA defense practitioners around, doing extensive investigation, engaging in extraordinary remediation during the pendency of the investigation, and then negotiating a superior settlement. What does this portend for FCPA enforcement going forward? If there was ever a case which seemed appropriate for a corporate monitorship, it was this one. The bribery scheme was in play for at least 10 years, as we've recounted from 2006 to 2016, and the recalcitrant China business unit executives were with the company until 2017. The company did not even have a CCO, yet no monitor was required. There was no real analysis in the DPA that we can find as to how the company avoided monitorship, so perhaps it was the superior negotiating. There are now real incentives for companies to take advantage of these discounts and incentives that the government is offering. Obviously, the first step forward is to self-disclose, but even if that's not an option, then to extensively cooperate, extensively investigate, and extensively remediate. While others may decry it, there appears to be a greater emphasis by the combined Department of Justice and Securities and Exchange Commission for cooperation after either self-disclosure or subpoena from the government. And all this would seem to follow the direction that the DOJ has been headed since the implementation of the FCPA pilot program in 2016, through the FCPA corporate enforcement policy and updates in 2017, and the evaluation of corporate compliance programs and updates since 2017. So all this, although it's surprising, it really isn't. If we look at the signals that we've been getting from DOJ and SEC for over the past 3 to 4 years, this outcome seems consistent with the clues that they're giving to the market. And I think that when you look at the numbers here, the company really made off in good shape.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of our special 5-part series on the Herbalife FCPA enforcement action. I hope you will join us again tomorrow where we take up our next episode. This special 5-part series is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. The Compliance Podcast Network is a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to visiting with you again.